On a cold December night in 1992, what seemed like an ordinary car accident in South Dakota turned into a baffling mystery that shook all of America. 3 youths. 1 overturned car. Endless questions. What happened that night? And who were the mysterious people seen at the scene? Get ready for a true story that will challenge everything you think is logical. This is the case of Arnold and Ruby. But before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. I hope you enjoy the video. Let's begin. At 6 a.m. on December 12, 1992, in the town of Lake Andes, South Dakota, a Chevrolet Monte Carlo was found at a road intersection near Route 281, on the edge of the Yankton Sioux Reservation. The weather was extremely cold, and the roads were dangerously slippery. You should know that the 3 people in the car were intoxicated. While crossing the intersection, the driver lost control of the vehicle. It slid across the highway and overturned in a shallow, frozen ditch between the road and an abandoned railway track. The driver was 20-year-old Arnold Archambault. Sitting next to him was his girlfriend Ruby Brugier, 18 years old. In the back seat was Ruby's cousin, 17-year-old Tracy Dion. So, essentially, these were 3 intoxicated teenagers who got into a crash. First responders eventually arrived. Tracy Dion was the only one still in the car. She was rescued and brought to safety. But for an inexplicable reason, a reason she still can't explain to this day, the other 2, Arnold and Ruby, had vanished from the car immediately after the crash. When Tracy opened her eyes and saw the car flipped, they were no longer there. Tracy couldn't understand why they would leave the car without helping her, especially in the freezing cold. It made no sense. These were people who loved each other. In such dangerous situations, it's natural to help your loved ones, not abandon them. For the next 3 months after the accident, no one heard a single word about Ruby or Arnold. It was as if they had vanished from existence. Then, on March 10, 1993, Ruby's body was found floating in the same ditch. The next day, Arnold's body was found just a few meters away. In the end, the 2 were found dead, but shockingly, the ditch and surrounding area had already been searched thoroughly several times in the weeks following the crash. Yet the bodies were only discovered about 20 meters from the accident site. What's so puzzling in this case is that each question only leads to more questions, and no answers. However, one question kept coming up among investigators. Did Arnold and Ruby have something to hide? You should know that Arnold and Ruby were both members of the Yankton Sioux tribe and had grown up together on the reservation. They began dating in high school and fell in love. Arnold was raised by his aunt, Karen Tuttle, after his mother died when he was 13. Karen described him as a kind and helpful boy who never caused trouble. She encouraged him to finish his education, and he did. He was so well-liked that he was even elected prom king. Ruby was described by her father, Cotton Brugier, as a sweet, cheerful girl who was never rude to her parents. If she did anything wrong, she would always confess to her family. She seemed like a perfect daughter. In 1991, while still teenagers, Ruby and Arnold became parents to a baby girl named Erica Marie. But they struggled with the responsibilities of parenthood. On Saturday evening, December 11, 1992, Ruby, Arnold, and Tracy decided to attend a party. They left baby Erica in the care of Tracy's father. The 3 of them enjoyed their night, and things seemed to go well. At about 6 a.m. the next morning, they returned to Tracy's house to pick up the baby. However, Tracy's father noticed they were still drunk and advised them to come back later that afternoon when they had sobered up. He didn't want to give them the baby in that state, a wise decision. The 3 agreed and left in the car with Tracy. A few minutes later, they reached that fateful intersection. According to Tracy, they checked both directions before crossing, but while crossing, Arnold lost control, and the car crashed into the ditch. Tracy's next memory was the car being upside down. This is the only thing she remembers clearly. It became evident that not taking the baby with them was a blessing, or her fate could have been tragic too. The shocking part was what happened next. Tracy found herself alone with Ruby in the overturned car. Arnold had suddenly vanished. She and Ruby began screaming for help. Ruby was crying and repeatedly shouting, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" while banging on the car door furiously. Eventually, the door opened enough for her to slide out. But when Tracy tried to follow, Ruby slammed the door shut in her face and left her inside. That was the last time Tracy saw Ruby. Why did Ruby leave her like that, almost letting her die in the overturned car? When police arrived and rescued Tracy, they immediately began searching for Arnold and Ruby. Authorities feared they had wandered off and possibly fallen into the frozen water nearby, either the lake or the ditch. Police officers combed the entire area thoroughly, including the ditch where the bodies would later be found. But at that time, there was no trace of Arnold or Ruby. They had simply vanished. Deputy Sheriff Bill Youngstrom, who investigated the case, said he dealt with many incidents where drivers or passengers disappeared after crashes. Often, they were intoxicated and fled the scene to avoid arrest. That's what he initially thought, that Arnold and Ruby ran away because they were drunk and didn't want to be charged. The police expected them to show up after a few days once the threat of legal action passed. But Arnold's Aunt Karen didn't believe that story. She said Arnold would never disappear without calling her, at least to say he was okay and would be back soon. Ruby's mother, Myrtle Brugier, also rejected that theory. She said her daughter wouldn't go that long without seeing her baby or contacting the family. At the same time, police found no evidence that either of them had fallen into the frozen waters. For the next 3 months, Deputy Youngstrom worked tirelessly, investigating every possible lead, but always returned home empty-handed. Then came spring, the season when everything begins to thaw. On March 10, 1993, a tourist passing by noticed a body floating in the ditch, just 20 meters from the crash site. It was Ruby. Deputy Bill was stunned. Her glasses and shoes were missing, but her clothes matched what she wore the night of the accident. The body was already decomposed and hard to identify, but they recognized her from one of her tattoos. Police decided to pump out the water from the ditch. The next afternoon, the second shock came. Arnold's body was found submerged about 4 meters deep, in the same spot where Ruby's body had been found. But the truly bizarre part? Arnold's body was well preserved, with normal skin color, and wasn't frozen. His clothes were intact, unlike Ruby's. Deputy Bill was completely baffled. How could 2 bodies found in the same ditch, just meters apart, be in such different states of decomposition? How did they end up in a location that had already been searched many times? During the past few months, this has been the crucial question. Of course, the bodies were immediately autopsied, but the results didn't help solve the mystery. Rather, they made it even more puzzling. The exact time of death couldn't be determined, nor the true cause. The coroner concluded that both Arnold and Ruby died from hypothermia. They didn't die in the car crash, they simply died from the cold. As for Deputy Bill, he agreed they may have died from the cold, but he didn't believe they died in that ditch. Bill is adamant and 100% certain that the 2 bodies couldn't have been there for 3 months without being noticed. He personally searched that ditch several times during that period and received reports from others who had also inspected it. In short, the only logical conclusion for him is that they died elsewhere and were moved there by someone, or something, later. Of course, the investigation continued, as everyone was asking what really happened. And as it progressed, more disturbing evidence surfaced. A strand of hair was found along the road, and forensic analysis confirmed it belonged to Ruby. In Arnold's pocket, a set of strange keys was discovered, one that appeared to be for a car and two that looked like house keys. To this day, the car and house those keys belong to remain unidentified. The case took a more dramatic turn when a woman came forward, claiming to have seen Arnold in a car with 3 other people on New Year's Eve, 3 weeks after the accident. Deputy Bill found her testimony credible, as she knew Arnold personally and had spoken with him before. She had no doubt that the person she saw was Arnold. Following U.S. procedure, the woman was given a polygraph test and passed, further supporting her credibility. Later, the identities of the 2 people she claimed were sitting in the back seat of the car were confirmed, and they were also subjected to lie detector tests. When asked, "Were you with Arnold? What did you do to him? Why were you with him?" the results indicated they lied in all their answers. Of course, they denied everything, saying they were simply at home. But it didn't end there. 5 more witnesses later claimed to have seen Arnold and Ruby after their disappearance. One said he saw them getting into a car right after the crash, which then headed east. Another reported seeing Ruby in January, more than a month after the crash, near the town of Wagner, South Dakota. If these testimonies are accurate, how did Arnold and Ruby's bodies end up in that ditch? Was it coincidence? An oversight by the police? A memory lapse? Or a deliberate act by an unknown party? Or is it something even darker? Ruby's father also doesn't believe they died in the ditch. He thinks they died elsewhere and were moved there later to give the impression they had died at the crash site. Arnold's aunt believes someone killed them, but doesn't know who or why. To her, they were kind and peaceful kids. She sees no reason anyone would want to hurt them. The families accused the police of negligence in both the investigation and the search. For his part, Deputy Bill became so desperate that he offered a $5,000 reward for any information that could solve the case, a sign of just how baffling the case had become. Naturally, thousands of people, especially online, tried to unravel the mystery. Various theories emerged. The most popular theory suggests that after the crash, Arnold and Ruby suffered from post-traumatic stress, combined with a high level of adrenaline and alcohol in their blood. They left the car to seek help but tragically succumbed to the cold and fell into the frozen ditch. But of course, this theory doesn't explain why the police couldn't find their bodies when they searched the ditch multiple times. So, it doesn't hold up. Another theory proposes that Arnold wasn't wearing a seatbelt and was thrown from the car during the crash. Ruby realized this and went into a panic, trying to help him. Both ended up dying from hypothermia in the ditch. But again, this doesn't make sense, because police certainly would have found them during their searches. This scenario ignores the fact that Ruby deliberately left Tracy trapped in the overturned car. Why did she do that? Another major question: why weren't both bodies in the same state of decomposition, even though they were found in the same place and environment? Why was Arnold's body perfectly preserved, with normal skin tone and intact clothes, while Ruby's was in an advanced state of decay? Most importantly, why did no search team find the bodies over the course of 3 entire months? This leads to the second theory, that they were murdered. But if that's true, why was Tracy left alive? And why didn't she hear or see anything? The authorities ruled out most suspects, except for 2 unidentified men who were seen near the ditch just hours before the bodies were discovered. They were driving a dark Chevrolet Blazer and were never identified. It's possible they were the ones who returned the bodies to the crash site. To this day, no one knows what really happened that night. The case remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in U.S. history, one that has baffled truth seekers for decades. And so, the fate of Arnold and Ruby remains a fog-shrouded mystery. The closer we get to the truth, the further it seems. What if the witness was right, and Arnold was alive 3 weeks after the accident. What if those two men in the dark blazer are the key to everything? The questions pile up, and answers remain scarce. But perhaps the most bewildering part is this. How could Arnold's body be so well preserved, while Ruby's was severely decayed, even though they were found in the same place? They say the dead take their secrets with them, but in this case, it seems the dead came back to add even more questions. What do you think? Was it a staged murder? Or something even stranger that we just can't understand? The case of Arnold and Ruby remains proof that the strangest stories aren't always fictional, and that sometimes reality is stranger than anything we could imagine. If you've made it this far into the video, let me know in the comments below. Leave a like, type the word mystery, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching. God bless you all. See you again soon, God willing. Take care and be safe.